Dr. Lisa Carter stood in front of the big screen at the Neptune space station. Her coffee was getting cold, but she did not notice. She was too busy staring at something that should not be possible. The screen showed nothing but empty space where there should have been thousands of signals from alien worlds. For 50 years, ever since humans first met aliens, the galaxy had been full of chatter. Radio waves, messages, and signals flew between star systems every day. Ships talked to each other across the void. Planets sent news to their colonies. The space around Earth buzzed with alien voices, speaking in hundreds of languages. Now there was nothing. Complete silence. Lisa pressed buttons on her control panel. Maybe the equipment was broken. Maybe something was wrong with the big radio. Dishes that listened to space. But every test came back normal. The machines were working fine. The problem was not with her equipment. The problem was that everyone in the galaxy had stopped talking. Commander Jake Sullivan walked into the control room. His face looked worried. He had been getting reports from other stations, and they all said the same thing. The aliens had gone quiet overnight. How bad is it? Jake asked. Lisa shook her head. I have never seen anything like this. Yesterday, we were getting over 10,000 signals an hour from the Centauri trade routes alone. Now we get maybe 1 or 2 weak messages per day, and they are all the same thing. What do they say? Lisa played back one of the few messages they had received. The voice was shaky and full of fear. Even through the computer translation, they could hear the terror. All ships return to homeworlds immediately. Emergency protocols are active. The ancient compact may be broken. Prepare for the worst. Jake frowned. Ancient compact? What does that mean? I do not know, but every species is saying the same thing. The Centauri, the Vorthan, the Keth Federation, even the war-loving Grex Empire. They are all running scared. On the bridge of the USS Horizon, Captain Amy Brooks watched her crew work at their stations. They were good people, trained for deep space exploration, but none of them had ever seen anything like what was happening now. Captain, said Lieutenant Ben Rodriguez from the communication station, I am picking up some long-range sensors. There are massive fleet movements near the galactic core. Ships are fleeing in all directions. Amy looked at the display. Thousands of red dots moved across the star map, all heading away from the center of the galaxy. It looked like every alien civilization was running from something. What could make them all so afraid? She asked. Ben shook his head. I managed to decode part of a Centauri military broadcast. They keep mentioning something called the Keeper, and saying it has started to wake up. The Keeper? That is all I could get. The rest was too scrambled. Back at the Neptune station, Lisa was working with her team to map the silence. They had found something strange. The quiet zones were not random. They formed a pattern, like ripples in a pond. The center of the pattern was Earth's solar system. Jake, you need to see this, Lisa called out. Jake looked at her screen. The map showed the galaxy with colored zones. Red zones were completely silent. Yellow zones had some scattered signals. Green zones still had normal traffic. The red zones formed circles around Earth, getting bigger and bigger. It is like something is spreading out from our system, Lisa said. Whatever is scaring them, it is coming from near Earth. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Are you saying Earth is the source of this? I am saying the pattern points to us. And there is something else. I am detecting strange energy readings from the moon. The readings were unlike anything in human technology. The energy patterns were old, older than human civilization. They pulsed with a rhythm that seemed almost alive. Dr. Tate Adams was an expert on alien artifacts. She had studied the ruins found on Mars and the strange crystals discovered in the asteroid belt. When Jake called her to look at the moon data, she dropped everything and flew to the Neptune station. "These readings are incredible," Kate said as she studied the data. "The energy signature is similar to the ruins we found on Mars, but much stronger. There is something big buried under the moon's surface." "How big?" Jake asked. "City-sized, maybe bigger." "And it is waking up." The first real clue came from an unexpected source. A damaged Zentari ship limped into the outer solar system, its hull scarred and its engines barely working. The crew was terrified, but they agreed to talk. Captain Amy Brooks met with the Zentari commander, a tall being with 4 arms and skin like blue metal. His name was Veltar, and he had been fleeing for 3 days straight. "Your people do not remember," Veltar said through the translator. "But we do. Our oldest stories speak of the Keepers. They protected the galaxy long ago, before the Great Sleep began." "What are Keepers?" Amy asked. "Guardians, warriors, the first people to reach the stars. They fought the darkness that comes from the void between galaxies. When the great enemy was defeated, the Keepers went to sleep. We thought they were gone forever. And now?" Veltar's 4 eyes looked directly at Amy. "Now the enemy stirs again in the dark places. The Keepers must wake to fight once more. But we fear what they have become after so long in the deep sleep." "Why are you telling us this?" "Because the strongest Keeper sleeps beneath your moon. We can feel it waking. Soon, your people will remember what they truly are." Amy felt confused. "Our people? Humans are not Keepers. We are just explorers." Veltar made a sound that might have been laughter. "You really do not remember. Your species carries the blood of the ancient guardians. That is why first contact was so easy. Deep in our racial memory, we recognize our protectors." Back on the moon, automated systems were coming online for the first time in millions of years. Deep beneath the lunar surface, lights began to glow. In vast chambers that had been dark since before Earth had life, something ancient was stirring, and the galaxy held its breath in fear and hope. The silence that had fallen over the stars was not empty. It was full of waiting, full of anticipation. Soon, the children of Earth would learn who they really were, and the galaxy would discover if its ancient guardians were still the protectors they once had been, or if they had become something else entirely. Captain Amy Brooks stood in the airlock of Luna Base Alpha, watching her team prepare for the most important dig in human history. The base sat on the dark side of the moon, where the strange energy readings were strongest. Chief Engineer Pete Morgan had been working for 2 days straight to set up the drilling equipment. "The readings are getting stronger," Pete said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Whatever is down there, it knows we are coming." Dr. Kate Adams checked her equipment. One more time. She had brought every tool she could think of for studying alien artifacts. But something told her that normal archaeology would not be enough for what they were about to find. "The energy patterns are changing," she said, looking at her scanner. "They are becoming more organized, like something is waking up." Jake Sullivan watched from the command center as the drilling began. The first few meters went through normal moon rock. But then the drill hit something different. The rock became smooth, almost glass-like. The energy readings jumped off the charts. "Stop drilling," Jake ordered. "We need to be careful here." The team switched to hand tools, carefully removing the strange rock piece by piece. What they found underneath made everyone stop and stare. The walls were covered in symbols that seemed to glow with their own light. The patterns were beautiful but alien, flowing like water frozen in stone. "I have never seen anything like this," Kate whispered. "The symbols are not random. They tell a story." Dr. Sam Parker was the team's language expert. He had studied alien writing from dozens of different species. But these symbols were different. They felt familiar, like something he had seen in dreams. The patterns are similar to some of the oldest human cave paintings, Sam said, but they are much more complex. Give me time, and I think I can figure out what they mean. As they dug deeper, the tunnel opened into a vast chamber. The walls stretched up into darkness, covered with the glowing symbols. In the center of the room stood structures that looked like they were grown rather than built. They curved and twisted like living things, but they were made of some kind of crystal. The energy is coming from the crystals, Pete said, checking his instruments. But I do not understand how they work. The power source should have run out millions of years ago. Kate approached one of the crystal structures. As she got closer, the symbols on the walls began to glow brighter. She could almost hear something, like whispers at the edge of hearing. "Kate, be careful," Amy warned. "We do not know what those things do." But Kate was already touching the crystal. The moment her hand made contact, the entire chamber filled with light. Images flashed through her mind, showing her things that could not be real. She saw humans, but not like any humans she knew. They were tall and strong, with eyes that held the wisdom of ages. They stood among the stars, protecting worlds she had never seen. "Kate!" Amy grabbed her arm, pulling her away from the crystal. "What happened? You were glowing." Kate blinked, trying to clear her head. "I saw things. Memories, I think. Humans who lived long ago, but they were different. They could do things that should be impossible." Sam was working frantically to translate the symbols. The more he studied them, the more excited he became. "Amy, you need to see this. The symbols are telling the story of a great war. There were guardians who protected the galaxy from something terrible. The guardians looked like us. That is impossible," Amy said. "Humans have only been in space for a few hundred years." "Not these humans," Sam replied. "These symbols are millions of years old. They show humans fighting alongside the aliens we know today. But the humans in the pictures have abilities we do not have. They can manipulate energy, travel through space without ships, and communicate across vast distances." The team worked through the night, uncovering more of the chamber. They found rooms filled with technology it made no sense. Devices that seemed to be grown from living metal. Screens that showed star maps of the entire galaxy. And in the center of it all, a room that made everyone stop and stare. The room was perfectly circular, with walls that seemed to be made of liquid light. In the center was a platform, and on the platform lay a figure in some kind of stasis field. The figure was human-shaped, but taller than any human they had ever seen. Its skin had a faint glow, and its hair was white as starlight. "Is it alive?" Pete whispered. Kate checked her instruments. "There are life signs, but they are unlike anything I have ever seen. It is like the body is operating on a completely different level." As they watched, the figure's eyes opened. They were not normal human eyes. They glowed with inner light, like stars in the darkness. The figure sat up slowly, as if it had been sleeping for a very long time. When it spoke, its voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "I am Keeper Marcus, last of the Guardian line. I have been waiting for you to find me." Amy stepped forward, her hand on her weapon. "What are you? Are you human?" Marcus smiled, and the expression was both kind and sad. "I am what your people used to be, before the Great Sleep. I am what you will become again, now that the darkness stirs." "We do not understand," Kate said. "The symbols show humans with incredible abilities, but we are just normal people." "Normal?" Marcus laughed, and the sound echoed through the chamber. "Child, there is nothing normal about your species. You carry the blood of the ancient guardians. The abilities are still there, hidden in your genes, waiting to be awakened." Marcus stood up, and as he did, the chamber filled with images. They showed the galaxy as it was millions of years ago, when humans were the protectors of all life. They showed the great war against something that came from the dark spaces between galaxies. They showed the final battle and the decision to put humanity into a deep sleep while the galaxy recovered. "We made your people forget," Marcus explained. "It was the only way to give you a chance to grow and develop naturally. But we always knew this day would come. The enemy sleeps, but it does not die. When it wakes, the galaxy will need its guardians again." "Why us?" Amy asked. "Why humans?" "Because you are the children of stars and dreams," Marcus said. "Your species has something the others do not. You can adapt, grow, and change. You can become whatever the galaxy needs you to be." Sam looked at the symbols on the walls. They were changing, showing new pictures. Images of humans across the galaxy, all beginning to change. "It is already starting, is it not? The awakening." Marcus nodded. "The process began when I started to wake. Soon, every human will begin to remember what they truly are. The question is whether they will be ready for what comes next." Outside the chamber, alarms were ringing at Luna Base Alpha. Reports were coming in from Earth of strange incidents. People were displaying abilities that should not be possible. A construction worker in New York had lifted a car with his bare hands. A teacher in Tokyo had spoken to her students without using words. A pilot in London had flown her plane through a storm by instinct alone. "The awakening has begun," Marcus said, as if he could hear the reports. "Your people will need guidance. They will need to learn to control their new abilities before the enemy arrives." "How long do we have?" Amy asked. Marcus looked at her with eyes that held the weight of ages. "Not long. The darkness moves between galaxies, even now. When it arrives, your people must be ready to fight. The fate of all life depends on it." The ancient guardian began to teach them, showing them secrets that had been hidden for millions of years. And across the galaxy, other species felt the change beginning. The guardians were waking up, and the stars themselves seemed to hold their breath. Dr. Lisa Carter was the first to volunteer. She sat in the crystal chamber on the moon, with Keeper Marcus standing beside her. The other team members watched nervously as strange lights began to dance around her body. "Do not fight the change," Marcus said gently. "Let your mind expand. Remember what you used to be." Lisa closed her eyes and tried to relax. At first, nothing happened. Then she felt something stirring deep inside her brain. It was like waking up from a long dream. Suddenly, she could sense things that had been invisible before. She could feel the space around her, not just as empty void, but as something alive and full of energy. She could sense the other planets in the solar system, the flow of cosmic radiation, even the movement of distant stars. Her awareness expanded. Beyond the moon, beyond Earth, reaching out across the galaxy. "I can feel them," she whispered. "The aliens. They are so afraid." Through her new senses, Lisa could perceive the terror that had gripped the galaxy. Entire fleets of ships fled toward the outer rim, running from something that filled them with ancient dread. She could sense their memories, passed down through generations, of a time when darkness had almost consumed everything. "What are they running from?" She asked. Marcus showed her images in her mind. She saw the space between galaxies, where normal matter was thin and cold. But there was something else there, something that existed in the gaps between reality. It was vast and hungry, and it was moving toward their galaxy like a slow tide. "It feeds on life itself," Marcus explained. "Not just death, but the very concept of existence. Wherever it passes, things do not just die. They are unmade, as if they never were." Lisa opened her eyes, and the others gasped. Her eyes now glowed with the same inner light as Marcus. She could see her reflection in the crystal walls, and she looked different, stronger, more than human. The transformation is permanent, Marcus said. You can never go back to what you were before. Are you ready to help others through this change? Lisa nodded. She understood now why the awakening was necessary. The galaxy needed guardians who could fight something that existed beyond normal space and time. Captain Amy Brooks was next. When the lights faded around her, she found that she could interface directly with the Horizon's computer systems. Her mind could process information at incredible speeds, and she could control the ship's functions with just a thought. The weapon systems are primitive, she said, studying the ship's defenses with her enhanced awareness. But I can modify them. I can see how to make them work against the enemy. Pete Morgan's transformation gave him the ability to understand and manipulate matter at the molecular level. He could reshape metal with his bare hands, turning simple materials into complex technologies. I can build things, he said in wonder. I can see how to make devices that should not be possible. As word spread back to Earth, volunteers began arriving at Luna Base Alpha. They came from every country, every walk of life. Construction workers, teachers, doctors, soldiers, farmers. All of them carried the hidden genetic markers that made the transformation possible. Not everyone could handle the change. Some people's minds were not ready for the expansion of awareness. They had to be careful, selecting only those who were mentally prepared for what they would become. Dr. Kate Adams worked with Marcus to understand the process better. Why do some people adapt and others do not? She asked. The guardian abilities require a certain flexibility of mind, Marcus explained. Those who are too set in their ways, too rigid in their thinking, cannot make the transition. But those who are curious, who can accept new ideas, they become something wonderful. The changes were not limited to the volunteers on the moon. Across Earth, people began experiencing spontaneous awakenings. A farmer in Kansas found that he could make crops grow faster just by concentrating on them. A nurse in Brazil discovered that she could heal injuries with her touch. A mechanic in Germany realized that he could understand any machine just by looking at it. President Helen Carter addressed the world from the White House. She had undergone the transformation herself, and her new wisdom helped her find the right words to calm the frightened population. My fellow humans, she said, her voice carrying an authority that went beyond normal speech. We are not becoming something alien. We are becoming what we always were, deep inside. Our ancestors were the guardians of the galaxy, and now that duty falls to us. The alien refugees who had fled to the outer solar system watched the human transformation with mixed emotions. They remembered the guardians from their oldest stories, but they also feared what humans might become. Commander Veltar of the Zentari fleet sent a message to Earth. We know you are changing, he said. We can feel it across space. The question is whether you will be the protectors we remember or something else entirely. Amy Brooks, now enhanced beyond her original human limitations, took the Horizon to meet with the alien fleet. Her ship had been modified with technology that Pete Morgan had somehow intuited. It could travel faster than light without using the normal hyperspace routes, and its weapons could affect reality itself. We are still human, Amy told the alien commanders. We still care about the same things we always did. We want to protect life, to help others, to make the galaxy a better place. But even as she spoke, Amy knew that the transformation was changing them in ways they did not fully understand. The enhanced humans could communicate with each other across vast distances, sharing thoughts and feelings instantly. They were becoming something like a collective consciousness, while still maintaining their individual identities. Back on Earth, the military was struggling to understand the new reality. General Frank Hayes had volunteered for the transformation, and his enhanced tactical awareness allowed him to see patterns in the enemy's approach that normal humans could not perceive. The darkness is not just one entity, he reported to President Carter. It is a swarm of smaller forces, each one capable of unmaking entire star systems. We need to be ready for a battle on multiple fronts. Marcus began revealing the locations of other Guardian installations throughout the solar system. Hidden bases on Mars, inside the asteroid belt, even in the clouds of Jupiter. Each one contained weapons and technologies that had been waiting for millions of years. Your ancestors prepared for this day, Marcus told the growing number of enhanced humans. They knew that eventually the enemy would return. Everything you need to fight, it has been waiting for you. But with each new revelation, the weight of responsibility grew heavier. The enhanced humans were not just gaining abilities. They were inheriting a legacy of cosmic guardianship that stretched back to the dawn of civilization. Sam Parker, his linguistic abilities now expanded to include the memory languages of a dozen ancient civilizations, translated the final messages from the Guardian archives. The last Guardians left us instructions, he said. They knew we would need guidance when the time came. The instructions were both inspiring and terrifying. They showed how to awaken the full potential of human consciousness, how to build weapons that could wound the darkness itself, and how to coordinate a defense across the entire galaxy. But they also showed the price of victory. The Guardians had defeated the enemy before, but at great cost. Entire human worlds had been sacrificed to protect the galaxy. The final battle had left the Guardian civilization in ruins, forcing them to place their descendants in evolutionary sleep. Will we have to make the same sacrifice? Amy asked. Marcus looked at her with eyes that held the pain of ages. That depends on how much you are willing to give up to save the galaxy. The enemy is stronger now than it was before. Victory will not be easy. As the transformation spread across humanity, the galaxy watched and waited. The ancient Guardians were awakening, but no one knew if they would be humanity's salvation or its doom. Tony Davis was building a house in Denver when the change hit him. One moment he was struggling with a heavy steel beam. The next he was reshaping it with his bare hands like it was soft clay. The other workers backed away in fear as Tony stared at his hands in wonder. I can feel the metal, he said quietly. I can feel every atom, every molecule. I can change it into anything I want. Across the city, similar scenes were playing out. Mary Johnson was teaching her third-grade class when she suddenly heard all their thoughts at once. She could sense their confusion, their excitement, their fear. Without meaning to, she began speaking directly to their minds, calming them with thoughts instead of words. Do not be afraid, she told them without moving her lips. Everything will be okay. The transformation was spreading across Earth like a wave. In hospitals, doctors found they could diagnose illnesses just by touching patients. In laboratories, scientists discovered they could understand complex formulas by looking at them. In fields and factories, workers realized they could control machinery with their thoughts. President Helen Carter called an emergency session of the United Nations. The other world leaders sat in stunned silence as she explained what was happening to humanity. We are not becoming monsters, she said, her enhanced voice carrying conviction that penetrated their fear. We are becoming what we were always meant to be. The genetic markers were always there, waiting for the right moment to activate. The Russian president leaned forward. How do we know this is not some kind of weapon? How do we know you have not been infected by aliens? Helen smiled sadly. Because I can feel your fear, Boris. I can sense the worry in your heart for your family. These abilities do not make us less human. They make us more human than we ever were before. But not everyone was accepting the changes peacefully. In some parts of the world, the enhanced humans were being attacked by those who feared them. Military units were trying to capture people with new abilities. Religious groups were calling it the end times. Jake Sullivan coordinated the response. From Luna Base Alpha, the enhanced humans could communicate instantly across any distance, sharing information and coordinating their actions. They worked together to protect those who were going through the transformation. "We need to be careful," Jake warned in a telepathic message that reached every enhanced human on Earth. "If we use too much force, we will prove their fears right. We need to show them that we are still the same people they always knew." Dr. Kate Adams was working with Keeper Marcus to understand the alien technology they were uncovering. Each Guardian installation contained marvels that redefined what was possible. Ships that could travel through dimensions, weapons that could reshape reality, tools that could terraform planets in days instead of centuries. The asteroid belt mining platforms alone could strip mine entire worlds in hours, Kate reported. But the energy requirements are enormous. "We would need to tap into the power of stars themselves," Marcus nodded. "Your ancestors learned to harness the fundamental forces of the universe. Gravity, electromagnetism, the strong and weak nuclear forces. They could manipulate all of them as easily as you manipulate simple tools." Captain Amy Brooks was testing the first of the new Guardian vessels. The ship was not built in any traditional sense. Instead, it was grown from living metal that responded to her thoughts. The hull could adapt to different environments. The weapons could be reconfigured instantly, and the propulsion system could fold space itself. "It feels like wearing a suit of armor," she reported to the other enhanced humans. "But armor that can protect entire star systems." The ship's test flight took her to the edge of the solar system in minutes. She could feel the vessel's capabilities expanding as she learned to use them. The weapons were not just destructive. They could create as well as destroy, building new structures from raw energy. But the most amazing discovery was the ship's defensive systems. The shields did not just stop incoming attacks. They could protect the space around the ship, creating safe zones where normal matter could exist even in the presence of the enemy. "We could use these ships to evacuate entire populations," Amy realized. "If we cannot stop the enemy, we can at least save some of the galaxy's people." The alien refugees were beginning to return to the solar system. They had felt the change in humanity, and their ancient racial memories were telling them that the Guardians had awakened. But they approached carefully, uncertain of what humans had become. Commander Veltar of the Centauri was the first to make contact with the enhanced humans. His ship approached Luna Base Alpha slowly, broadcasting messages of peace and hope. "We remember the old stories," he said when he met with Amy and Jake. "Our ancestors spoke of the Guardians with respect and love, but they also spoke of their terrible power. We hope that you will use your abilities wisely." Amy could sense the fear underneath his polite words. "We are still human," she assured him. "We still care about the same things we always did. We want to protect life, not destroy it." But even as she spoke, Amy knew that the transformation was changing them in ways they did not fully understand. The enhanced humans were becoming something new, something that had never existed before. They were individuals, but they were also part of a larger consciousness that spanned the entire species. General Frank Hayes was coordinating Earth's military response. His enhanced tactical awareness allowed him to see patterns in the enemy's approach that normal humans could not perceive. The darkness was not just one entity. It was a swarm of smaller forces, each one capable of unmaking entire star systems. "We need to think beyond conventional warfare," he told the other military leaders. "This enemy does not just destroy, it erases. We need weapons that can fight on that level." The Guardian installations were revealing their secrets. On Mars, they found factories that could produce Guardian vessels by the thousands. In the asteroid belt, they discovered mining platforms that could harvest the raw materials needed for the war effort. On Jupiter's moons, they uncovered shipyards that could build fleets capable of defending entire sectors of the galaxy. But the most important discovery was on Earth itself. Deep beneath the major cities, they found networks of Guardian technology that had been dormant for millions of years. These systems could enhance the transformation process, helping more humans awaken to their true potential. It is like our ancestors prepared for this exact moment, Pete Morgan said as he studied. The ancient devices. They knew that humanity would need every possible advantage when the enemy returned. The enhanced humans were working together in ways that amazed even them. They could share knowledge instantly, coordinate complex operations without speaking, and support each other across vast distances. A scientist in Tokyo could share a discovery with an engineer in London, and both could work on the same problem simultaneously, but the changes were not without cost. The enhanced humans were losing some of their connection to normal humanity. They could understand the fears and concerns of unenhanced people, but they could not fully relate to them anymore. It was like trying to remember what it was like to be a child. We are becoming something beyond human, Dr. Lisa Carter observed. The question is whether we can remain human enough to remember what we are fighting for. Marcus watched the transformation with mixed emotions. He had been alone for so long, the last of his kind. Now he was surrounded by others who shared his abilities, but they were also different from what he remembered. Humanity was not just awakening to their guardian heritage. They were evolving into something new. Your ancestors followed a path of sacrifice and duty, he told the enhanced humans. But you have the opportunity to choose a different path. You can be guardians without losing yourselves. The first reports of the enemy's approach came from the deep space monitoring stations. The darkness was still light years away, but its influence was already being felt. Stars were going out, one by one, as the enemy's advance forces probed the galaxy's defenses. We have maybe a year before the main force arrives, Amy reported. We need to be ready. Across the galaxy, the refugee fleets were beginning to turn. Around, word was spreading that the Guardians had awakened, and hope was returning to species that had given up. But with hope came expectation. The galaxy was looking to humanity to save them all. Can we do it? Jake asked Marcus. Can we really defeat something that unmakes reality itself? Marcus looked at the enhanced humans around him, seeing the power and potential in their glowing eyes. Your ancestors did it once, and you are stronger than they ever were. The question is not whether you can win. The question is what you will become in the process. The final preparations were beginning. Humanity had remembered what it truly was, and the galaxy was about to discover if its ancient guardians were still worthy of the title. The enemy finally showed itself at the edge of the Milky Way. It was not a fleet of ships or an army of soldiers. It was something far worse. Space itself seemed to fray and tear where it passed, leaving behind emptiness that hurt to look at Dot Commander. Jake Sullivan stood in the command center on Luna Base Alpha, watching the sensors track the approaching darkness. The enhanced humans were linked together in a network of consciousness that spanned the entire solar system. Through their shared awareness, they could feel the enemy's presence like a cold wind blowing through their souls. It is not evil, Doctor, Kate Adams said softly. It is something else. Something that exists to prevent the universe from becoming stagnant. It clears away old life to make room for new. Keeper Marcus nodded sadly. The universe has its own immune system. When galaxies become too crowded, too comfortable, it sends the darkness to start fresh. We Guardians exist to argue with the universe, to say that life is worth preserving. The first battle took place near Pluto. Captain Amy Brooks led a squadron of Guardian vessels against the enemy's scout forces. The combat was unlike anything that had ever been recorded. The enemy did not use weapons in any normal sense. Instead, it simply touched things and made them cease to exist. They are not destroying our ships, Amy reported through the telepathic link. They are unmaking them, as if they never were. The Guardian vessels had been designed to fight this kind of enemy. Their shields did not just deflect attacks. They reinforced the reality around the ships, making it harder for the enemy to unmake them. But the cost in energy was enormous. We cannot fight a defensive war, General Frank Hayes realized. We need to attack the source. Amy's ship folded space around itself, appearing directly in the middle of the enemy formation. Her weapons did not fire energy or projectiles. Instead, they fired pure creation, building new structures and new realities faster than the enemy could unmake them. For a moment, the two forces were balanced. Creation and destruction, existence and void, locked in a struggle that made the space around them shimmer and twist. Then Amy's ship began to glow with impossible light. "I can feel it," she said through the link. "The enemy is not just trying to destroy us. It is trying to understand us. It wants to know why we resist the natural order." The battle raged across multiple dimensions. Normal space was just one layer of reality, and the enemy existed in all of them simultaneously. The enhanced humans had to learn to fight on levels that their ancestors had never imagined. Tony Davis, the construction worker who had first discovered his ability to reshape matter, found himself rebuilding space itself as fast as the enemy could tear it apart. Mary Johnson, the teacher who had awakened telepathic abilities, was holding the minds of the fleet together, preventing the enemy from driving them insane with despair. "We are not just fighting for our lives," President Helen Carter broadcast to the enhanced humans. "We are fighting for the right of life to exist at all." The enemy's main force was approaching fast. It was vast beyond comprehension, a wave of unmaking that stretched across light years. Where it passed, stars went out not because they died, but because they were erased from existence. Dr. Lisa Carter, her consciousness expanded to encompass vast regions of space, could see the enemy's true nature. "It is not malevolent," she reported. "It is just doing what it was created to do. But it does not understand that life can be beautiful as well as chaotic." The refugee fleets that had been hiding in the outer darkness began to return. They had felt the change in the galaxy's defenders, and their ancient memories were telling them that the Guardians had truly awakened. Ships from 1,000 different species converged on the solar system, offering their help. "We cannot fight your battle for you," Commander Veltar told Amy, "but we can stand with you. We can show the universe that life is worth preserving." The final confrontation began when the enemy's main force reached the outer planets. Jupiter's moons became battlegrounds where reality itself was tested. The enhanced humans fought with weapons that could reshape the fundamental forces of physics, while the enemy responded with attacks that made entire moons simply stop existing. Pete Morgan, his ability to manipulate matter, now expanded to cosmic scales, began building a massive structure around the sun. It was not a weapon but a beacon, broadcasting the story of life in the galaxy to anyone who would listen. "If we cannot win," he said, "at least we can make sure the universe remembers what it is losing." But Keeper Marcus had a different plan. He had been studying the enemy through the enhanced human's shared consciousness, learning its patterns and motivations. "The darkness is not our enemy," he realized. "It is a force of nature, but forces of nature can be redirected." As the battle reached its climax, Marcus made his choice. He disconnected from the human network and reached out to the enemy directly. Not to fight it, but to communicate with it. "I am the last of the old Guardians," he said, his consciousness touching the vast intelligence that guided the darkness. "I have seen what you do, and I understand why you do it. But look at what we have become. Look at how life has grown and changed." Through Marcus, the enemy experienced human consciousness for the first time. It felt their hopes and dreams, their love and creativity, their endless desire to grow and explore. It saw that life in the galaxy was not stagnant, but constantly evolving. "We are not the same species you fought before," Marcus continued. We have learned to change, to adapt, to become something new. Is that not what you want? Is that not what the universe needs? The enemy paused in its advance. For the first time, in millions of years, it encountered something that made it question its purpose. These new guardians were not just fighting to preserve the old ways. They were fighting to protect the right of life, to become something greater. Amy could feel the change in the enemy's behavior. It is listening, she reported. It is actually listening to us. The battle slowed, then stopped. The enemy's forces hung in space, no longer advancing, but not retreating either. Through Marcus, they were experiencing something they had never felt before: doubt. You show us a new way, the enemy finally spoke, its voice like the whisper of dying stars. But how do we know that life will continue to grow? How do we know it will not become stagnant again? Marcus smiled, even as his consciousness began to fade from the effort of maintaining contact. Because we promise to keep changing. We promise to keep growing. And if we ever forget that promise, you can come back to remind us. The enemy considered this for a long moment. Then, slowly, it began to withdraw, not in defeat, but in acceptance. We will return to the spaces between galaxies, it said. We will wait and watch. If life becomes stagnant again, we will return. But for now, we will let you try your way. As the darkness retreated, the galaxy began to come alive again. The refugee fleets emerged from hiding, their crews cheering and weeping with relief. The enhanced humans felt the change ripple through space, like a great weight being lifted from the universe. But the victory had come at a cost. Keeper Marcus had given everything to make contact with the enemy. His consciousness had been stretched too thin, and he was fading like a candle in the wind. Will you be okay? Amy asked him. Marcus looked at her with eyes that were growing dim. I have done what I was meant to do. The Guardians are awake, and the galaxy is safe. That is enough. As Marcus faded away, the enhanced humans felt his final thoughts join their shared consciousness. His wisdom, his memories, his love for the galaxy became part of them. They would carry his legacy forward, but they would also add their own unique perspective to the Guardian tradition. The stars, which had been silent with fear for so long, began to sing again. Species that had been hiding in the dark came back to the light. Trade routes reopened, and the galaxy began to heal from the terror that had gripped it. But humanity had been forever changed. They were no longer just another species among the stars. They were the guardians of the galaxy, protectors of life itself, and they took that responsibility seriously. We are not the same people who lived on Earth before all this began, President Carter said in her address to the galaxy. We are something new, something that has never existed before. We are humans who remember what we used to be, but who also choose what we will become. The enhanced humans spread throughout the galaxy, not as conquerors, but as teachers and protectors. They helped other species develop their own potential, shared their knowledge freely, and stood ready to defend life wherever it was threatened. And in the spaces between galaxies, the darkness waited and watched. Not as an enemy, but as a reminder that life must always keep growing, always keep changing, always keep reaching for something greater. The galaxy was safe, but it was not the same. The children of Earth had awakened to their true nature, and they would never sleep again. The stars sang with their voices, and the universe listened to their promise of endless growth and eternal change.